Hey listeners, Mallory Willsea here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of our creators at Enrollify, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about why I love the Talking Tactics podcast hosted by Diana Kibbolds. Every other Tuesday, Day drops a new episode where she focuses on a single tactic that moved the needle on any enrollment metric, from inquiries and booth visitors to apps completed and deposits, even registrations, you name it. The catch? The tactic had to be done with limited resources, either by a single person or a small but mighty team, or limited time, or maybe without a lot of money. The podcast format is fun and engaging, and it's just different from the more traditional 60-minute interview style shows. If you work in enrollment management or marketing, be sure to give Day's show a listen. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Talking Tactics wherever you get your podcasts.
I want you to make some bets. I want you to tell us who we need to be paying attention to, whether that's programs or institutions or people. Pick the future winners of higher education.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
All right, Seth, the Saratoga racetrack is officially opening this weekend. You got to know, because you're from upstate New York.
I'm from Albany. I love Saratoga.
You know how this town gets in the summer, and we are like days away right now. It's so exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And I've always loved the track. I always loved going up there with my friends. I once had to go there on court-ordered probation during high school, but that's a story for another day. But I always found myself at the track one way or another. That's a true story.
That is a story for catching up with your pals at a conference over a beer.
I will buy anybody a drink that asks me about that story in person. That is a conference promise.
Deep cut. I love it. Okay, so because the racetrack is opening and I'm getting into the betting mood. I was also in Vegas a couple months ago. And so just gambling away here. If you listened to last week's episode, you already know that we have been taking inspiration for our topics from a LinkedIn post that I put up. I think it was late May, early June. And today's topic is also inspired from one of our listeners who, his name's Eric, and he's awesome. He commented on that post and said, I want you to make some bets. I want you to tell us who we need to be paying attention to, whether that's programs or institutions or people. Pick the future winners of higher education. And I think we both were that sounds like a really fun topic. And let's slot that when we're already in this horse betting mood.
Yeah, let's do it. I love that idea. I'm ready. I got a couple bets. I'm excited for yours. And I would also say anybody listening would love to hear yours too. Find us on LinkedIn with the post, but would love if folks share theirs. But I got a couple. So I'm excited to hear yours. How do we want to go about this?
All right. So listeners, we did not tell each other what we've picked. So what Seth says is going to be a surprise to me and vice versa. I'm just hoping we didn't pick the same ones. We each picked an institution and an individual. And we're going to load up our show notes with links to where you can learn more about the people and the schools that we are picking. So with that said, Seth, why don't you kick us off with your pick for an institution?
Sounds perfect. Okay, so I will clarify on my intro. I kind of cheated a little bit and I did like a category and then I picked a winner within the category. And so the first is like, what kind of category of organizations or institutions do I think are going to win? One example I would say is non-degree institutions and vocational education. I am a very bullish bettor on the renaissance of vocation. We have a lot of people talk about the crises around college, but the reality is I think the decline in consumer confidence is specifically in the degree, not in colleges collectively. That's my opinion. And I think that people still look at education as a bridge to improved career opportunities and improved quality of life. I just think people are growing less patient with the idea of waiting 4 years for traditional undergrad degree. And I think people are increasingly seeing the attractiveness of maybe owning your own business or working independently in the trades, as an example. So my winner that I'm picking, that I'm watching, is an organization called Lincoln Education Services. Lincoln Education Services is a publicly traded company that specializes in non-degree and vocational work. They offer programs and have brands around automotive, around health. There's just so many programs, but they're really not traditional degree offerings by and large. Their stock is up 63% year over year, and they are opening up new campuses. So I've been following Lincoln for a while. I read their investor reports when they're released with their quarterly earnings. They are expanding. They are opening up locations. Like, there is real demand growing here for like non-degree alternative education. And it's important to call out because vocational education was quite popular, 10, 20 years ago, maybe even more like 20 years ago. And I think a lot of the players in that space that were for-profits didn't all survive and thrive over the more recent era. And so like there are not actually as many vocational players around today as there have been in the past. Lincoln is an example organization that's lasted a long time. But if I'm a betting person, I think Lincoln's stock might be up 63% year over year, but they're going to only go higher. I think more campuses are coming, and I think they're extremely well positioned to be at the forefront of what I think is a renaissance in the trades. So that's my first pick for an org. Yeah.
All right. I love this pick. And I like that you picked this category too. Seth, do you know if they have competitors? Because I feel like they're going to have tons of them with you calling them out.
Yeah. So they do. It depends a little bit on category. So like when it comes to things like automotive, there's a group called Wyotech that I'm super familiar with. When it comes to health, there's a lot more local, smaller brands, and sometimes even community colleges get into the vocational health space. And so my view of their competitors is very regional. I think it's important to remember when it comes to vocational or trades, it is much more of a local competition than a national one, as opposed to online programs. And so, in this case, I think they have a lot of competition, but they also have a lot of locations. And my hunch is that it differs based on each location, if that makes sense.
Do you have a sense of how many students they're educating?
Ooh, I don't. I have to look that up. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put a link to it. But it's definitely in the thousands. And so it's a large org. But that is my pick, Mallory. What is yours?
All right. I am placing my bet on Forsyth Tech Community College. In episode 11, we did a deep dive on challenges around community colleges. So listeners know that when we did that episode, right, we talked about the real big challenges that community colleges have to retain students. About half of first-year students wind up dropping out, and retention levels to degree completion can really range, but none of them are very high. Forsyth Tech is bucking all the trends. They have 9 campuses, 22,000 students, 150 plus programs. So the reason I picked them is for a few things. Like operationally, they have gone through a number of changes over the last 4 years that have been thoughtful, mindful, connected to their strategic plan, and are the reasons why they are being so successful. They invested, first and foremost, in a new student success model. It's not a traditional unit breakdown of you have your admission officers over here, your advising folks over here, student success folks on this other island. They kind of got rid of those lines and said that we're going to look at this by location. So they have a bucket for their off-campus And then they have a bucket for their on-campus. And they completely reoriented everything in enrollment management around those two buckets. So off-campus would be things like students currently in high school, community-based organizations like maybe a hospital or festivals that are taking place in their community. And that group of employees are trained to recruit, enroll, and advise that student. So there's consistency there. There's ownership of these programs. Then on the other side, they have their on-campus support that are more like your adult learners and current students. At the same time, they changed up this student success model. They also made really smart investments in a rebrand, a website redesign, and an overhaul of their marketing technology. So the rebrand happened in 2020. The CRM implementation happened in 2020, 2021. The website redesign happened in 2022. And then they introduced AI into their workflow in 2023. All of this comes together and spells success for them. During COVID, we know community colleges were in a lot of ways hit the hardest. Forsyth Tech didn't have those challenges because of all of these changes. Their enrollment actually from 2019 to this year has grown by more than 7%. And their staff has actually saved over 40,000 minutes in responding to just redundant inquiries thanks to their recent implementation of AI. It's handling 80% of their student inquiries now without ever having escalation to a human. And just last week, we were talking about velocity over volume. So Forsyth Tech has kind of figured that one out. I mean, it's just like one success story after another over there. And their leader, Dr. Janet Spriggs, she and the institution have been honored and recognized by achieving the dream this year. I mean, they are just doing everything the way you should be, and they are seeing the results on the other side.
Wow, that's amazing. I just think at a time when I think so many folks are relatively doom and gloom on community colleges, it's a great example that like even though segments can be under particular pressure, it doesn't mean there's not room to stand out and innovate and win. That's a great call out. I'm with you. I'm betting. I'm on the same page. I'm taking that bet.
I mean, you know, they've already started to see success. So I'm feeling like this is my safe bet. You know, it's the favorite horse in the race right now. And I'm putting my big win bet on them with the confidence that they're just going to continue to crush it. All right, Seth. Let's talk about the individuals that we are going to place some bets on.
Let's do it.
Drum roll. What's your pick?
So my pick is Dr. Michael Thomas, who's the president at Concordia University, Irvine. In full disclosure, I've worked with him in the past. But I think, you know, when we talk about faith-based education, which has been something we've discussed before, that's a segment that's under a lot of pressure as well. And I just think seeing like really strong leadership in the face of headwinds and what it can do is really impressive. And so while I think Michael's an amazing president, I also think it's like I'm almost again going for a category, which is like, you know, presidents of private faith-based institutions that are finding ways to be on the balls of their feet and not on their heels. Few examples, things he's done. He put marketing at the front of strategic planning and literally said we have to do brand research before we even put the final strategic plan together for the institution because it has to be based on the reality of where we are, not the aspiration of where we want to be. They've done a lot of campus expansion. They bought a new location all focused on health in Irvine. And so again, I think healthcare is growing a lot. And I think a lot of faith-based institutions are missing the fact that there's a crossroads with health and faith, especially when it comes to folks that are pulled to the most service-focused components of faith, like a nursing program. You know, for a lot of folks like nursing, you're treating the whole patient, and it's super reasonable to think about what is your belief and opinion around spirituality when you're going to be guiding people sometimes at like end-of-life care. And so I think like faith-based institutions actually could have a huge role in health education, and I don't know that they've all embraced that. I've loved the way that Concordia has doubled down on their existing strength in nursing. They've also expanded in the Inland Empire with nursing, and so it's like they've really put health at like the tip of the spear of a lot of their expansion, and then they're out there just doing a ton of fundraising. And so to me, it's like I see a lot of faith-based institutions that are struggling, enrollment's declining, they're really like afraid to change or adapt, and then I see newer presidents, and so Michael Thomas is kind of my person, but again, it's that category of like bold, maverick, faith-based leaders of small private institutions that are unafraid to change the portfolio, to change the brand, and to make big moves. In almost all cases, I think progress comes from progress, not from stagnation, meaning if we want to get to somewhere else, we have to do something else, not just do what's already been done. So he's my standout. And I think it's important because, we talked obviously recently about the presidential crisis and the gap in presidents. And so when I come across presidents like this, I just feel like so much confidence that there are leaders out there that are very capable and they're very willing to serve. And so, not every presidential opening has to stay open or be filled with someone who may not last. There are great presidents out there having a huge impact, and I think they should be celebrated.
Wow, that is incredible. As someone who's educated from a faith-based institution, I have a special corner of my heart reserved for those schools. And I love the connection that you spoke to around the healthcare programs and bringing the faith-based education more into that area. I mean, gosh, that's incredible. All right, you ready for mine?
I'm ready. I'm a drum roll. All right,
So my heart stopped when you said Michael, because my pick's name is also Michael.
Okay. So we do have some similarities here.
It is a different Michael, but an equally worthy one. But I will say, for a quick second, I was like, "Oh crap!"
All right, I'm excited to hear. I'm thinking through all the Michaels I know, so this is great.
Team Michael over here, apparently. So my pick is Michael Bettersworth, and he is the CMO at Texas State Tech College. So I clearly went with this community tech college theme. He has been in his CMO role for just over a year and a half, but he's been at the institution for more than 2 decades. I've only known Michael for about 6 months and just been so impressed at his leadership abilities. A little bit of his bio and background: he helped to design and implement the nation's first higher ed funding model based entirely on student earnings outcomes. And he's published like more than 24 studies on emerging occupations and technologies. He even holds a patent in the application of machine learning and text-to-skill translation. Working for Texas State Tech College, like, he's spent so much of his career thinking about how to help these community college students who are in sometimes a lot of very vocational type programs, how to help get them to degree completion, but also make sure that they're in the right program and that that program is going to, pay the dividends for them on the other side. The reason I picked him, though, is because of the changes that he has been instrumental in leading at TSTC when it comes to their admission process. And this is another example of a community college that's bucking the national trends. They were on an older CRM implementation. They were in a ERP that they had just migrated into. There were a lot of usability issues, and it was really having an impact on the application experience. It was cumbersome. There was a really high abandonment rate, and it was kind of like going against their philosophies around more consultative admission processes. So these two things were like running into each other. And Michael was very much like a key player in leading the college through some very strategic changes. So he focused on more user-friendly systems. And it had, again, I'm like a numbers person, so I'm going to rattle a few off here, but it had a real impact. Application count increased by 30% just from summer to fall, not even a full year cycle, one season to the next. They saw a 30% increase. Conversion rates for their applications, I mentioned they had a high abandonment rate. It was a 75% abandonment rate. Now they are at a nearly 90% completion rate with these changes, and their cost per application dropped from $424 to $125. But Michael's not even done yet. He's like, I got all these wins in my back pocket. He's not even done yet. He has a phase 2 that's going to be focused on the entire customer journey and lead qualification and kind of aim to reduce some of the challenges that they're facing with the goal of improving overall persistence for their students. And then phase 3 is going to bring career services into the conversation and really put that at the forefront and make sure that the TSTC is connecting students with the career opportunities as early as possible in the enrollment process. It's like, this leader is just so impressive to me. I've had, the good fortune of like getting to have a meal with him and like hang out with him at a conference. And it's just like, you stand around this guy and he's just like exuding leadership. I feel like it just rubs off on you. He's great.
That's awesome. That's a great call. And I love the numbers behind it too. I just think it's like, we're all doing hard work, but when you can put up those numbers, I just think it makes both a statement and it's just a point of, I don't know, a proof point for the work that you're doing and the ability to double down and keep pushing it. So that's super exciting. I'm not as familiar with Michael, but I'm sure going to be now. I am a little bit, but now I got to dig way deeper. I didn't realize quite how much success was there. That's so awesome. And kudos to him for that.
Yeah. So we will make sure we put some links in the show notes so that you can connect with our Michaels and learn more about their initiatives. In closing here, I'm actually getting on the road this week. So I am off to the EduWeb Summit. Seth, didn't you keynote that summit last year?
I did. It's a great conference with a great group of people. So I'm super envious that you get to go do that.
Yeah, it's my first time back in a couple years. It's back in Philly, so easy for me to get to. And Allison Tercio, our host of the application, is actually the chair of the programming committee this year. So the sessions are going to be top notch if she is behind them. We are going to be on the ground podcasting. So you are going to see on this feed a number of podcast interviews that I will conduct with the attendees, the conference organizers, the presenters. I'm really looking forward to it. We've got an awesome lineup of folks. And these podcasts, when we go to conferences, they're quick. They're 10 minutes or less. So they should be great for your next commute. Keep an eye on this Pulse channel because we'll be dropping some of those literally this week. Like as quickly as we can produce them, we will get them out there for you.
Love it. That's awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope that we introduced you to a couple institutions and people who, we're putting our bets on. You can go find them, make your choices. But like Seth said a little bit ago, we want to hear your bets too. So find us on LinkedIn and let us know. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.
The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.